The first human civilizations appeared about 5,000 years ago in the Middle East. The first cities, the first religions, the first kings, a radically new form of social organization. And then writing, which took man into history. The 20th century archaeological digs established Sumer in Mesopotamia, today's southern Iraq, as the unique home of this revolution. But in the year 2000, a treasure surged up from a valley lost in the mountains of southern Iran. Magnificent stone vases bore witness to the presence of another cradle of civilization no one had even suspected existed. The oldest Mesopotamian legends had indeed evoked an ancient kingdom called Aratta, protected by high mountains. But no archaeologist had ever found any trace of it, and for some, Aratta was nothing but a myth.
اولین ظرفیه بنده خدا بود همینجا. او میگفت والا مادرم اینا خواب دیدن. متوجهی؟ خواب دیدن. خود من گفته شما هیچ نداریم برین این لب رودخونه یه گودی بکنین. داخل او گودی چیزی هست برداریم بریم. این بنده خدا من رفته اونجا شروع کرد برای کردن او ظرف اولی همون بنده خدا دید. او ظرف اولی همون بنده خدا دید. او که دید رفت فروختشن 500 تومن 1 تومن همچین چیزی فروختش. بعد یه تمام مردم به رجوع آوردن. به همه گفت. او اومد به من گفت. او یکی ده به او فامیل یکی دهش گفت آقا برین لبی رودخونه کل بزنیم.
After 5 years of drought, the Halil River flooded, devastating this southern Iranian valley. The treasure which it unearthed represented an undreamed-of opportunity for the valley's inhabitants. Hundreds of families set about digging along the banks of the Halil Roud.
Why are your children digging here?
I swear, this morning the schoolmistress asked me for 200 tumans. And I didn't have the money to pay her. If they did something for us, then we wouldn't have to do this. But since they don't do anything, we have to.
This isolated region lies along one of the most frequented opium routes from Afghanistan. Very soon the traffickers converged upon the town of Jiroft, where for only a few $100s they could buy objects worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in the Western art markets. An entire year passed by before the Iranian authorities appreciated the dimension of the drama being played out here. Early in 2001, Tehran dispatched an armed contingent to secure the region and put an end to the trafficking. A month later, Professor Youssef Majizadi was called upon to provide the first evaluation of 200 objects seized during the arrest of a smuggler. This specialist in Mesopotamian culture had no idea what was awaiting him.
The first time when I saw these objects, I had almost a heart attack. Oh, my heart stopped for a few moments.
The style of the objects was familiar to him. Fragments of similarly designed objects had been found on different sites dating from 3000 BC. some thousands of kilometers apart. In Mesopotamian temples, in Oman on the Arabian Peninsula, and along the banks of the Indus, and as far off as Afghanistan. Their origin was an enigma to archaeologists. The quantity of the pieces confiscated here left no doubt to their provenance. They had to have been made in this valley, and that simple observation opened up dizzying possibilities.
I cannot explain how exciting was seeing those objects. For the first time in my life, I was seeing something which was against what I had learned all through my life in archaeology. I saw something which doesn't exist in Mesopotamia, much more elaborate than Mesopotamian art.
The finesse of these bas-reliefs, carved nearly 5,000 years ago into the soft chlorite stone, suggests that at the time there was another culture at least as highly developed as that in Mesopotamia. Isolated from the rest of the world by mountains higher than 4,000 meters and immense stretches of desert, the valley in which the artifacts were discovered is a green oasis situated midway between the two most ancient cradles of civilization in the Middle East, Mesopotamia and the Indus. This 400-kilometer-long strip of land has practically never been explored by archaeologists, except for a little mound, Tepe Yahya, exposed to a dig in the 1970s, revealing traces of a village from some 5,000 years ago. And now, in the widest part of the valley, about 30 kilometers south of Jiroft, the inhabitants here have found the most objects. The Iranian authorities needed several months to regain control of the region, and when Professor Majizadeh could finally go to the site, he discovered a veritable carnage. What the pillagers looted were immense cemeteries, leaving them devastated. The number of gaping holes suggests the phenomenal quantity of objects extracted from the graves. But they also demonstrate what a large population lived here 5,000 years ago, something no one had ever imagined.
Sad, very sad. We have lost a great amount of information, not only the objects, but lots of information. We don't have any skeleton, any bones that we can study, nothing at all. We don't know who they were. We don't know what was their relation to one another. We don't know their diseases. We don't know their religion.
The three largest pillaged cemeteries are situated near a small village called Kuna Sandal. Two imposing mounds overlook the village and stand out over the landscape. Lying on their surface, a multitude of shards of pottery bear witness to the presence of remnants dating back 3 millennia before Christ. Perhaps all this indicates is another village like Tepe Yahya. But these mounds are enormous, and Majizadeh is deeply convinced that this discovery is of an entirely different import. Four of the oldest Mesopotamian legends mention a fabulous kingdom called Aratta, an ancient El Dorado. which tantalized the Sumerians with both its power and riches. No archaeologist has ever found Aratta. Nonetheless, one of the legends indicates quite precisely the itinerary that an envoy of King of Uruk took on a mission to demand the King of Aratta's submission. The people of Susa and those of Anshan saluted Inanna's envoy as humbly as small mice. In the high mountain chains, all bowed down in the dust as he passed. He crossed 5 mountains, 6 mountains, 7 mountains, never lifting his eyes until he came in sight of Aratta. In 1976, Majizadeh published an article in which he deducted from these clues that Aratta had to be found in this particular region of southern Iran. 30 years later, his dream is coming true. He may well be able to prove the existence of the legendary Aratta. In November 2002, the Iranian Cultural Heritage Organization confers upon him supervision of all the digs in the Halil Roud Valley. He organizes an international team comprising 1/2 Iranian archaeologists and 1/2 specialists coming from American and European universities. The dig center is set up in the town of Jiroft, 25 kilometers north of the sites. The situation has a special sweetness to it for him. In 1984, accused by the Islamic regime of being a counter-revolutionary, he had to leave Iran for France, his wife's country. 18 years later, due to his unique qualifications with regard to the period, the Iranian authorities insisted that he accept to direct the dig. The site is enormous. Nearly 200 workers drawn from neighboring villages were trained for the job. "12 sounding shafts are drilled simultaneously on the 2 sites. Very soon, impressive walls of unbaked brick appear on the surface of the taller of the 2 mounds. A stratigraphic trench gives a glimpse of the nature of the vestiges it's composed of.
We have found out there's an ancient archaeological mound about 10 meters high. On top of that, we have the remains of one single architectural unit, is about 11 meters high. And this is one period, one single building. And must have been a huge construction that we have still this much remaining of it.
A little further than a kilometer off, the second site is quite damaged. Its soil has been used for years as landfill for the nearby palm groves. What remains of the mound resembles nothing more than a huge pile of unbaked bricks. But the precision of their alignment reveals a surprising mastery of construction technique.
We calculated about 5 million bricks have been used in order to build here. You see the lines are straight. I mean, unimaginable how a mason in that time could have imagined such a great construction. The engineers were really, really genius people.
This monument seems, in fact, to be made up of several platforms piled one on top of the other, a structure that's reminiscent of a motif on some of the chlorite vases.
It's a step construction, but it's huge, it's gigantic, 400 meters by 400 meters.
In Mesopotamia and Elam, pyramids of this sort have been discovered on numerous sites. We believe that they were religious monuments. In Mesopotamia, they're called ziggurats. But the oldest yet found dates back to the end of the 3rd millennium pre-Christ, and none have a base longer than 120 meters. With the first level at nearly 400 meters long, this one would be several centuries older and significantly larger than any of the other known constructions of this type.
This is a job of 20 years of working. For that reason, we have asked many countries to come and help us, because this is an international, archaeological problem here we have.
The whole of the site is already rendering an incredible quantity of materials of the greatest diversity. And Majizadeh is aware that the capacity of Iranian archaeology isn't up to the task.
Right away, I could see that this is going out of the borders. It's international type of material we are dealing with. A civilization doesn't belong to one nation. This is the history of development of human life, human culture, human civilization.
Due to its isolation during so many years and the emphasis put on Islamic culture, Iran is lacking 3rd millennium specialists. To help fill this lacuna, the professor has brought into the team one of the world's great glyptic specialists in ancient Oriental art, Holly Pittman of the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, this is early. Oh, this is Bronze Age.
3rd millennium.
Yeah. I know what it looks like. My first priority is to see a new generation of Iranian archaeologists is prepared to deal with what is, in my estimation, one of the richest archaeological landscapes in the world.
The further the campaign proceeds, the more the site proves her absolutely right. At the foot of the larger mound, the number 6 sounding hole located vestiges of a different nature, a group of habitations. Very quickly, the connection with the objects found in the cemeteries becomes obvious.
Could I have your attention, gentlemen? We found this stone in the ground with Mr. Salari. Pay close attention not to miss these sort of things when you're digging. This must have been an animal's or human's eye that they used on the stone vases.
Professor Majizadeh hence decides to bore other holes some 700 meters from the mound, in the direction of one of the largest of the pillaged cemeteries. They immediately come upon abundant traces of occupation. In fact, the habitations seem to stretch out in every direction around the 2 mounds.
If you go a little back from there, you see little mounds from here to Conor Sandal North. All those little hills are just like these little mounds here, which you have architecture. And then it shows that the entire area was one huge city.
This city probably stretched out all the way to the edges of the large cemeteries, usually situated at city gates, probably encompassing the ancient riverbed of the Halil Roud. That would give it a gigantic perimeter for a city 3 millennia BC. Parallel to the dig, Professor Majizadeh has entrusted his assistant, Mr. Soleimani, to systematically explore the entire course of the Halil Roud. And this valley harbors an incredible quantity of relics bearing witness to a considerable human presence 5,000 years ago.
I would say up to now we have about 500 or 600 sites has been recognized. 10-15% of these sites are Islamic or historical sites, but the rest of them are prehistoric.
Even those locations in the deepest recesses of the mountains, today practically desert, seem to have been occupied during the period.
There are paving stones in the ground, ancient paving stones. They prove that there's a cemetery here.
There's lots of them. The mountain is covered with them.
There's often bits of pottery around. Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that.
This first dig season ends on a note of certainty. This gigantic city, emerging bit by bit from the ground, was the center of a vast kingdom that prospered here 5,000 years ago. An enormous missing piece in the great puzzle of the origins of our civilizations.
This is a civilization totally was ignored, totally was forgotten in the history, and now it's coming up little by little, little by little. It's just emerging from the shadows, coming up. That is magnificent.
This discovery turns all of Middle Eastern archaeology upside down. Who were these people? What level of development did their civilization reach? What role did they play in the birth of the first civilizations? If a society could have developed here in the heart of these mountains, it's probably because 5,000 years ago, this valley, perhaps even more so than that of the Mesopotamian, offered all the characteristics of an ideal cradle of civilization.
My very first impression as we drove down the mountains into the valley is that this was a little Mesopotamia. This was an alluvial plain that was very, very rich agricultural land. It had a river that was both the source of life, but also a very unpredictable element in the landscape, and so humanity had to, be creative in order to work around it.
To attempt to understand just what point the inhabitants of this city achieved in domesticating these riches, new specialists joined the team. Marjan Mashkour is a paleozoologist. She studies bone fragments found on the site. Margareta Tenberg is interested in vegetal residue, particularly seeds and charcoal collected in the habitations. From their research, bit by bit, emerges the image of a culture already very advanced towards the status of an urban civilization.
Here I'm looking at some bits of unbaked brick that come from the site, and inside here I see, among other things, little bits of barley stuck there inside. And what we've got here is cultivated cereals.
Here, as in Mesopotamia, agriculture was already in place, and it seems that man had given up hunting in favor of raising livestock.
What I'm looking at here is essentially caprines, meaning sheep and goats. In fact, we got a lot of oxen and caprines in Kunar Sandal. That's essentially domesticated stock. There clearly wasn't much hunting activity, which is relatively normal and not very surprising for an urban site of this kind. All this is very exciting for us, to be so close to the man and his actions. You wind up really being able to imagine the man who was here.
But remnants from their meals show her that these shepherd-cum farmers weren't satisfied with the resources of their valley and didn't hesitate to search afar for products they liked.
We've constantly been finding fish bones, and in great quantities, from fish that were eaten, of course. I find it fascinating to think that we're 300 kilometers from the Persian Gulf, and that at the time, they managed all the same to bring all these products here.
Charcoal found on the site suggests that perhaps they even invented and subsequently exported to the Persian Gulf a kind of crop cultivation, which eventually became vital throughout all the desert and semi-desert regions.
In this sample, I found seeds from what appear to be wild grapes. And there's also charred date stones that come from this kitchen or this house. And that's interesting, because it indicates the presence of date palms going back to the Bronze Age.
The date palm is one of the valley's riches today, and its numerous representations on the chlorite vases are evidence that it played an important role in the 3rd millennium BC.
The earliest date palm plantations are found rather on the other side of the Persian Gulf, which is to say on the Oman Peninsula. And that's at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC. But perhaps the date palm was already cultivated here. And in fact, it was introduced to the Oman Peninsula from this region here.
If it was introduced as such, it may well be that this civilization wasn't isolated in these mountains, but made contact with other contemporary cultures. Now in mid-February, out of a trench at the foot of the large mound, new material starts to appear, giving further substance to the hypothesis. Seal impressions, Holly Pittman's speciality.
Seals are an artifact type that are a hallmark of the ancient Near Eastern civilization. They start as early as the 7th millennium BC. This is an example of a stamp seal. It's a stone. It has a handle on it on one side, and on the flat side, it's engraved with an image.
The print of a seal embedded in the clay which covered a jar was an official document identifying the owner of the contents. 5,000 years ago, exchanges concerned for the most part raw materials, and each city or region produced a type of seal, the motifs of which were unique to it. And here, these motifs present an exceptional variety.
We have imagery and forms that are more closely connected to Mesopotamia in the west, to the Indus Valley in the east, perhaps to the north, to Afghanistan, to Bactria, and again to the Persian Gulf regions in the south. So we've got people here from these different regions coming to collect these raw materials that then they are going to take back to their places.
This city was hence the center of a vast network of exchange involving the whole of the civilized world of the epoch. But what did the representatives from these far-off kingdoms come looking for here? And why was this activity concentrated at the foot of this mysterious edifice in this large mound? In Mesopotamia, it was under the eyes of princes or priests that these transactions took place, that containers were sealed and opened. After this discovery, Professor Majizadeh concentrated much of what was at his disposal in order to enlarge this trench. And it finally rendered the key which allowed him to understand the nature of the building buried in this mound.
This is the western facade of the monumental building, this mound, which is facing toward the ancient course of the ancient bed of the Halil River. That is the entrance, because on the right-hand side you see the facade of the entrance wall. Apparently, its entrance was turning a little bit, about 90 degrees in a curvature, you entering inside this construction. This year we could penetrate about 20 meters or 15 meters inside this gigantic building. The one who built this one and lived in this one, in this monumental architecture, was not an ordinary person. It was a higher class, a ruling class, maybe the king of Aratta.
This edifice was an enormous citadel comprising 2 levels. This architecture, exceptional for the period, almost certainly inspired the motives on these vases. And for the archaeologists, it's one further proof demonstrating the degree of sophistication attained by this civilization.
Imagine you have a palace here on the top of this mount, and in the evening you sit on the balcony, on the terrace, and you look at the nature. It's really beautiful.
We have here another independent, autonomous, autochthonous civilization that arises in the early 3rd millennium BC. And so for me, the idea that the Sumerians would conceive of this place as a place like Aratta, which they describe as another Mesopotamian city-state, only very, very far away, makes perfect sense.
In an effort to attempt to protect this archaeological treasure from subsequent pillaging, Professor Majizadeh devoted his days off to giving conferences in the valley's villages. And this approach has proved fruitful.
Police is good, but temporarily, but not for always. The best thing is to educate people, to bring up the level of their education about the cultural heritage. What does it mean, the value of these objects?
The region schools come to the sites and question the archaeologists. And those same families who not more than a year ago were digging here looking for treasures come to take strolls here on Fridays.
ما نمیدونستیم واقعا نمیدونستیم همچین کسی بود. ولی از زمانی که دکتر مجیدزاده اومد اینجا تشریف آورد و صحبت کرد گفت همچین چیزی هست، ما بسیار خوشوقت شدیم. بیشتر به روستامو فعالیت میوا بکنیم، بیشتر توجه داشته باشیم.
فرمایش داشتید.
یه هدیه ناقابل بود تا دفعه شما دادم. بفرمایید چون جاش داخل خونه ما نبود بهتره.
Some workers are coming, some people from the village with a plastic bag, things in it, and saying, "آقای دکتر, I'm sorry, this is what we had at home, and I hope you accept it."
Professor Majid-Zadeh has great hopes for this third campaign, but it's begun under unfavorable auspices.
Well, I hope it doesn't rain in the site, because if it rains, we are going to close up the diggings. بله آقای سلیمانی. بله بفرستیم برن کارگر. اینجا همین کار میکنیم.
You are researchers. You're archaeologists. The work you're doing is not building laborers' work. Now hereafter, as God willing, perhaps there will be digs the whole year. And the first thing they'll do is come looking for you to dig here and to work, since you know the work. And now are you going home? When you work here in the morning, the afternoon you go to your fields, right? So you're not unemployed. It's us who are.
Rain is rare in this semi-desert region, and it instantaneously transforms the site into an unworkable quagmire. All of these remains are of unbaked brick, which is to say, dried mud. Water and the subsequent high temperatures, attaining 50 degrees, irremediably destroys all the structures that the dig has exposed to the open air.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Here it's not that bad. Well, we excavated here last year. We excavated here 2 years ago, and this is destroyed. That's destroyed. Each year you have a patch of excavation. You can never have an overall picture, and that's important, you know. بنداز پن کن رو پایین. آفرین همونجوری. اونم بیار.
Luckily, the rain never lasts long here, and when the work recommences, a trench next to a platform begins yielding up a great number of seal impressions, accompanied by the most diverse debris.
Golemi's deposit is a pit. I mean, it's a trash dump. And it's off the edge of her platform. And she's got in that pit a lot of small drinking cups and bones and charcoal and pottery sherds. So it's a mix of the kind of debris that just would be get swept off when the day's work was finished.
Among the scraps found in this ancient rubbish dump, Holly Pittman identifies signs of the activity that took place on this platform.
She also has, coming out of that pit, beautiful small pieces of unfinished beads and small objects of semi-precious stone. So that's what makes me at least think that this is a working platform for the production of luxury small stone objects.
And from the nature of the seal impressions, she deduces that this workshop was at the heart of the transactions taking place here.
We have basket ceilings, we have small boxes, we have small bags. It seems like there are a lot of very small packages that are being sealed. So that suggests to me that these small stones, these precious stones are, being, counted, weighed. We have weights to show that they, controlled the amount of materials.
This discovery prompts the archaeologists to reconsider a strange pile of stones which had slid down during the first season while the stratigraphic trench was being dug, and which no one had paid any serious attention to. Once cleaned and sorted, these stones reveal their true nature.
We've got all of the stones, metals, and minerals that could have been needed for this craftsmanship and its commercialization during the period. And all the stones necessary for the work are found within 100 kilometers of the site, including a very beautiful chlorite, allowing them to make the vases which we found in such abundance on the site.
Preserved inside the very walls of the citadel, this stock of raw material was probably the key to the mysterious commerce which drew traders here from all over the world. Gathering and cutting these stones was certainly the speciality of this kingdom. In the Mesopotamian legend, here is what the king of Uruk demands as a sign of submission. That the people of Aratta bring here the stones from their mountains. Let them cut the flawless lapis lazuli from the blocks. Let them erect a holy temple to glorify Inanna and decorate its interior. The wide dispersal of the chlorite vases suggests that the reputation of these stone cutters of Halil Roud had also reached Mesopotamia. Among the seal impressions, Holly Pittman finds new proof of the originality of their talent. To her great surprise, she finds a type of motif she's never seen before.
This is a very highly developed style with its own iconography, its own forms. And in my opinion, we have 2 or 3 master craftsmen who have tremendous imagination and who are creating images that are just full of life and vitality.
The style of these seals, as sophisticated as that of the chlorite objects, demonstrates the extraordinary creativity of the artists of the Halil Valley. For Professor Majidzadeh, this exceptional talent might be one of the keys of the influence that this civilization exercised over its epoch.
You have never seen elsewhere in the entire region their imagination, their artistic value they have used on this. You know, when a merchandise goes from one place to another, even today, the ideas goes with it.
Some of the recurrent elements in this iconography seem, in effect, to illustrate legends that we see appearing much later in Mesopotamian imagery. The legend of Etana is only documented in Mesopotamia at the very end of the 3rd millennium BC. It tells of how a serpent finds revenge against an eagle for devouring its young. The reptile is advised by a god to hide in a carcass to surprise its enemy.
I mean, this representation of a cow and an eagle attacking, and confrontation between 2 snakes and 1 eagle. It came to my mind, this must be a story of Etana, 600 years ago or 500 years ago, before Mesopotamians represented on their seal impressions.
Likewise, the Gilgamesh epic, perhaps the most renowned Mesopotamian legend, there is the character of a scorpion man guarding the mountain entrance to the land of the dead. But in all of Mesopotamia, only one image has been found representing it. In the Halil Roud Valley, the scorpion man appears on dozens of different vases. For the professor, all these signs suggest that this culture developed before that of Mesopotamia and that it could have influenced the latter in many domains. When the results from the site's geophysical readings arrive to Eric Fouache, the professor's intuition seems to be confirmed.
We can see quite clearly here in red and brown a bedrock, which is the topography upon which the people of Kono-Sandal first settled, whereas we've got a dozen meters of deposits on top of it, which are very probably, in their entirety, archaeological deposits. About a meter down, we see the appearance of geometric structures that couldn't be anything other than walls. And at 2 meters, we can see that the anomalies aren't arranged in the same manner. That shows quite clearly that we've got several generations of remains, and hence an ancient foundation for this site.
The ground underneath Kono-Sandal might well enclose traces of occupation long preceding the most ancient Mesopotamian remains.
The geomorphologists told us we have about 12 meters of cultural deposit below the surface. Therefore, it's not 5,000 years ago they settled here. Maybe they settled 10,000 years ago. We don't know yet.
This discovery is only revealed at the very end of the 2005 campaign. On the site, nearly all the trenches have been sealed, with the exception of Mr. Soleimani's at the palace entrance. And it's there that an incredible dramatic turn of events takes place.
Professor, we've just found a piece of baked brick here. Could you come over?
On this piece of baked brick, the first discovered on the site, there are clearly carved out characters. There is no possible doubt that it's an ancient inscription.
Give it to me, please. Is it you who found this? That's very good. Thank you very much.
Everyone had hoped but never dared believe that they'd have it in their hands. This civilization had also invented a form of writing at the dawn of the 3rd millennium BC.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
How was your day?
Not bad. I have a little present for you.
All right, am I ready for this? Congratulations. You did it.
Oh, we did it.
We did it. Where did it come from?
Another Soleimani found it in the fortification at the doorway. What do you think of it?
It's a building inscription. It's linear Elamite, but it looks earlier to me.
Linear Elamite is one of the first forms of writing, examples of which have been found on the Iranian plateau. Unfortunately, to date, it's only partially deciphered. And this inscription seems older than any yet known version.
It's either phonetic, syllabic, ideographic.
The prospects that this discovery offers are so stunning that Holly Pittman chooses to momentarily laugh it all off.
Maybe I can read A-R-A-T-T-A. Maybe. Aratta. Maybe, yes?
Right on the top, on the latest layer, we have this writing. And as I said, we have 12 meters of cultural remains below this. And chances are we find earlier version. And you never know. One day maybe writing begins from here. I'm not claiming anything, but I mean, you never know.
Jiroft is placing a great deal of hope in this past that is shining a spotlight on the city. In February 2005, it enthusiastically hosted an international seminar devoted to the relics in the Halil Roud Valley, and more than 2,000 people came from all over the region to attend its inauguration. Archaeologists from all over the world discovered on this occasion these very real relics from one of the world's oldest cities, maybe until today only known in legend. It will probably take decades of digs to pierce through this civilization's mysteries. But the dream that drives Majid-Zadeh is becoming more and more concrete every year.
Really, it's frightening. I don't dare to say what changes this site is going to bring because no one will believe it.
Perhaps we'll never know if this city is really the one the Mesopotamians called Aratta. But no one can any longer claim that Mesopotamia was the unique cradle of civilization in the Middle East. This other cradle has already regained its place in the memory of mankind.
الان از زمانی دکتر مجیدیان اومده گفته آقا بله این اسم روستاتون اسم فلان فلان در همه تاریخ‌ها ما صح باشه. روستا اصلا اسم از جیرفتش نبود تا به روستای ما برسه. الان همه متوجه شده، همه کشورها، همه دنیا میدونن بله 5000 سال قبل از اینم همچین چیزی در ایران وجود داشته. کجای ایران؟ مثلا جیرفت جز آستان کرمانه دیگه.